Good evening.
Hello.
هاي هلو مساء الخير. We're just going to give everybody a couple more seconds to jump on and then we can get started. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to get going. Hi, my name is Noor Khadamfar. I am the Director of Campus Engagement for the MIT Arab Alumni Association and one of the organizers of this year's College Admissions Arab Mentorship Program, or CAAMP. And I am joined today by my great co-host, Noor, also Noor. Noor, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Noor. I am part of the Arab Student Organization at MIT. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Great. So before we get going, also, I'll just give you guys a little bit of background about me. I didn't go to undergrad at MIT, but I went to undergrad at McGill, although I did get my master's in city planning from MIT. And so I was there between 2017 to 2019, and I have a bit of an understanding of, how it is to apply to undergraduate American schools, although the graduate program is a little different. But today, obviously, you're a high school, we're reaching out to students, and so we're just going to focus on the undergraduate process. And so here is a little bit about the agenda that we're going to talk about today. Essentially, we're really going to answer some of the questions, why study abroad, how to prepare for and apply to schools in the US, how to pay for schools in the US, some visa logistics issues as it relates specifically to Lebanon, student life, next steps, and Q&A. And I want to encourage everybody now to, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. If we take a look at them while we're presenting, we'll happily answer them. If not, we'll leave them to the end, and you can feel free to unmute yourselves at the very end of the presentation and ask your question as well. And this presentation is completely in English. However, if you need me to clarify anything in Arabic, it's very easy for me. فينا نحكي بالعربي كمان بس كل شيء بالإنجليزي هلا. So I thought we would maybe mix it up. So no worries. And we can get started. I guess, Noor, do you want to introduce a little bit about, where you went to school in Lebanon and, what year you are at MIT and all of that?
Yes, so I'm from Lebanon. I graduated high school from Sabis, Kura, and I am currently a freshman here at MIT, hoping to major in aerospace engineering. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is definitely has been a year that's unprecedented just because of COVID. So for Noor's first semester, she wasn't on campus. But MIT issued a letter 2 weeks ago saying that starting September, everybody is going to be back on campus and everything is going to go back to normal. So if you're applying, well, I don't know, at least some of you, the deadline has passed for 2021-22, but for the years after, we're going to go back to normalcy, whatever normalcy means. So we can go ahead and get started. So the first question is, why apply to schools outside of the Arab world? A lot of us grew up there. I myself, I'm Syrian, but I grew up in Kuwait, and I lived there my whole life before I left there, the Middle East. Really, the first thing is more stability. Obviously, our region, I'm not going to tell everybody in Lebanon right now, is not the most stable. And so a lot of the times, education gets interrupted, you're a little more worried. So when you're studying outside of the Arab world particularly, you definitely have that aspect of more stability, although as COVID has shown us, things can happen everywhere all the time. So that's one thing to note. The next thing is truly the education system abroad is phenomenal. It's different, although different universities have different strengths, but generally speaking, you can almost guarantee a better education if you leave the region. And the third reason is really personal growth. When you leave the community that you grew up in, a place that you're more comfortable with, the growth that you experience just being in a new place, meeting new people is unparalleled. And so, especially for me, you know, when I left and I went to Canada for undergrad, I learned so much, and a lot of it was difficult, but it was really, truly lessons that I feel like if I had stayed in my hometown, I would not have learned. Okay, so particularly, why should you study or apply to schools in the US? You know, there's Europe, there's Australia, there's a lot of, you know, different schools all over the world that are truly excellent academically. But why apply to schools in the US? And really, the first and primary thing is academic excellence is incredible in the US. And the way that they try to teach students there is really a mix of like hands-on, a mix of more bookish academic experiences, and you know, constantly when you look at ratings of schools worldwide, in the top 20, a lot of them are US based institutions. The other aspect is cultural diversity. The US is really a melting pot of all different cultures. You get to meet people from so many different countries, from so many different religions, different ages even. I had a friend with me in my master's program who was older than me in 25 years, and he was in the army. And so you get to meet all these different kinds of people in your program that I think it's difficult to do that anywhere else. And then, of course, the last one, the value of a US degree worldwide, and I'm not just talking about in the Middle East, is really important and very valuable. And so when you invest in the education abroad, and I know it's a lot more expensive than if you were to stay home, but the value that you get for it, whether it's in job wages, whether it's in experience, constantly seems to rise. So, I mean, these are all just three of the main reasons that I think that it's great to apply to schools in the US. So you now know, I think a lot of you here already know that they want to apply to schools in the US, but what's next for you? I think the first step is to get an idea about what you want to study, whether it's engineering or biology or political science. Really, there are so many possibilities, and understanding what kind of person you are and what you could be interested in, noting that that could change once you get into college, that really will help you understand, you know, which schools that you're going to apply to. Second, and I think a lot of times this isn't stressed enough, you really need to understand what type of place that you want to live in. You know, the US is really large. There are places that are very rural where the whole college is just one town and nothing else. And there are places where you could study, like in New York City, one of the largest cities in the world. And so, although the academic institution I think comes first, really close second is location and the vibe of the city that you or town or whatever it is that the place that you're going to. I think that's really important to understand. Personally, for me, I've only ever grown up in cities. I've only ever lived in cities. I've lived in Montreal and Boston and Houston. And so these are all really large international cities, and that's where I'm comfortable living. I don't think I would be as comfortable if I went to New Haven, even though, let's say, Yale is there. So that's something that you should consider as well. And then the third thing is you want to be realistic about your chances of being admitted into the schools and the places that you're going to. So, you know, not everybody can or should be going to MIT. If you're into literature, I don't think you should be applying to MIT. And if your GPA is like a 1.8, you also realistically will not get into MIT. So I think it's also good to have a mix of schools that you think, okay, realistically, I can get into these schools, have a couple of reach schools, have a couple of safety schools. So that's important to consider. Okay. So then I think that creating a list of schools that meet your need, whether it's on subject, location, and admission probability, is good. I encourage people, usually if you're applying to schools in the US, to have around 10 schools, 8 to 10 schools. That might seem like a lot, but I personally like having the option. Noor, I don't know what it was like for you when you applied for undergrad and how many schools you chose to apply to.
I applied to 7 or 8, I think.
Okay. And what made you pick what schools you wanted to apply to?
It was mostly location-wise and also ranking-wise. I mean, I just wanted to go to a good school. And there was a lot of good schools to choose from, which is great.
Yeah, I think Noor makes a good point that there are a lot of really good schools. And so let's say some of you might have your heart set on, I want to go to MIT or I want to go to Harvard. That's phenomenal, but truly, and I'm speaking now as someone who's 28, who it was 10 years ago since I last applied to school. It doesn't matter as much where you go as much as like the experiences that you choose to take. So sometimes people like hone in on one specific school for the name, for the prestige, but really college is amazing in general, and the experiences that you get going to university in the US alone are going to be unparalleled. So don't be upset if you don't get into a top 10 school and you get, or a top 20 school. You know, all the schools in the US have their strengths and their weaknesses, MIT included. And I think it's important to note that it's really difficult to make a wrong decision as long as you feel comfortable, you know, going to a relatively good school in a city that you love. And then the other thing I would think is also to get advice from people who know you. This is one of the biggest decisions you're ever going to make. So, you know, ask friends, ask family, current students like Noor, or alumni like myself, as many questions as you need. You'll be surprised how many people are more than happy to help you. One of the things that you can do, for example, is go on LinkedIn and find an alum or current student network and just message, be like, hi, I'm a prospective student. I'm really interested in applying to XYZ university for XYZ reason. A lot of people will be more than happy to respond because we were all in your shoes at one place. And I think, especially now with the technology that's available, it's a lot more, it's a lot more accessible. Okay. So now that you're getting ready to apply, here are the major components of all applications in the US. The first is academics, whether that's your GPA or your standardized exams. The second is extracurricular activities. Then you have the personal essay, interview, and recommendation letters. And these will differ from school to school, but we're just going to give you a broad overview. Okay, first at academics. So specifically at MIT, you know, test scores are really not the only factor. They have a broad policy of admitting people, not numbers. So just because, let's say, you even score a perfect 2400 on the SAT, that's not that's just you can't assume that you're automatically going to get in because of that. So that's something to note. Obviously, GPA plays a huge part because it's, you know, 4 years of your academic strength. But if in 9th and 10th grade you weren't as strong as you were on 11th and 12th grade, that's okay. You know, there's progress and there's more of a story to tell. However, being a lot of us having grown up and lived and being educated in the Middle East, we do need to take an English as a second language test, whether that's the TOEFL or IELTS. So I'll share a little more about the requirements there because those do have a minimum score. With regards to SAT and ACT, Noor, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about your experience. My understanding was for COVID specifically now for for people being admitted into the class now, they didn't require them because of COVID, but they're going to require them again, I believe. And Noor, I don't know how you felt like about the SAT and ACT scores and how strict they were, how big of a part they played into you being admitted.
Yeah, so when I was applying, the SAT subject tests were a thing. They're not anymore, so you don't have to worry about those. And for me, so just to show that they really don't admit just numbers, I had an SAT score below the average. That is that like people who get into MIT, but I still got in. So you don't, so grades aren't everything. They're obviously very important, but they're also not everything. I don't know if I would assume that this year they're going to come back to having students do the SATs, but I didn't hear anything specific about that.
So yeah, I think it's good to just keep checking, letting and seeing the requirements for the different schools. Obviously, there are AP, IB, A levels that can help boost your application as well. But I mean, these are just showing universities that you are well prepared to take on college material, because a lot of these AP programs or IB or A levels are at a college level. But again, if your school doesn't offer them, and I'm not sure about everyone's school here, it's fine. It's not a complete if you don't have AP or IB, it's not like they won't even look at your application. So specifically English for non-natives, these are MIT's requirements. So for a TOEFL, you need to score a minimum of 90, but it's recommended that you score 100. And there are a lot of different alternatives to the TOEFL. I can only talk about the TOEFL because I took that myself, both for undergrad and graduate. If you are being educated in English and you are regularly taking and reading English content, you should be fine. I don't even think that you need to study for it personally. But if you feel like you are a lot more Arabic or French focused, then studying for it might be something that you could consider. But in both cases, both times I didn't study for my TOEFL, and I scored above the recommended range. So that should be more than fine for everyone, I think, on the call. Extracurriculars. I love to talk about this because I think that everybody can get good grades and everybody can take the hard courses, but extracurriculars really help identify what makes you different from everyone else. So these are really activities outside your academic curriculum, whether that's Model United Nations or debate, or whether it's sports, or whether it's music. So it really gives colleges a better sense of who you are and what you're passionate about outside the classroom. I want to stress that colleges usually can see right through people who are only joining activities because they think it's good to add to their resume. That's not a strategy I recommend. Your time is valuable. Don't spend it being part of an activity that you're not passionate about just so you can have it on your CV. Truly, truly, colleges will see right through this, and it won't look good because your passion for it won't shine through. You don't need to have like 6 or 7 different extracurriculars, although if you love all of them, it's okay. Have 2 or 3 ones that you absolutely love, that you're really focused about, ones that show maybe your leadership, your commitment, team building activities, and you can talk about them more in your essay or in your recommendation letters, and we'll touch more about that later. But I just think that, do something you actually like because you love it more than because it would look good on a resume. So here we're just mentioning a couple of them, like whether it's music or performing arts. A lot of people do summer activities or university summer programs. There are a lot of, I remember being in high school and helping raise money for charity, or being a founder or leader of a group if you're in student council. So there's so many different things. That's why, don't force yourself to do a lot. Just look at one option that you think you might be really good at, or you are really passionate about. And participate. Okay, personal essay. Personally, I think that this is my opinion. This is the most important part of your application. It really showcases, who you are, why you chose this particular university. You can't just copy paste the same personal essay for all the application. I know that there's a common app where there's one standard question, but usually a lot of universities tend to supplement that with smaller essays, and we'll share some of MIT's as well. But it's really, important to convey how you're self-motivated, how you're passionate, why this college fits in with your goals. They don't want like a 10-page paper, right? A lot of these have word limits. So if you're being specific, if you're being clear and you're being brief, really that's the way I think to win over the admissions committee. Noor, I don't know, do you remember what you wrote your topic on? I actually never asked you.
So I don't know if it was different when you applied, but there wasn't one bulk essay and then supplements. It was all just a bunch of 250 and 100 word essays, shorter ones. So I wrote each about something different.
Okay.
Which I liked about MIT because I could explore more and I could tell them more about different aspects of my life and not just focus on one thing.
Yes, and I think that now the next one, so these are some sample essay questions for other universities. So for example, there is some as broad as please complete a one-page personal statement, submit it. You know, something super broad that, and it's up to you to decide. There's more specific ones like what qualities do you like best in yourself? What do you like least? Evaluate a significant experience or achievement and tell us about a person who has influenced you in a significant way. So you can really see the range in the questions, and so that's why I really think copy pasting from the same essay to different ones won't work. But MIT specifically, like Noor mentioned, they had like a bunch of smaller essays, 250 words or 100 words, and it's like describe the world where you come from or pick what field of study at MIT appeals to you most right now. And, you know, we know you lead a busy life, so tell us something that you do simply for the pleasure. These are all on the website, by the way, so you can go into MIT admissions and like look at these essay questions. But you know exactly 250 words or fewer, that's a paragraph or two paragraphs at most. So really focusing in directly on who you are, make it authentic. I think it's also easy to spot people who are writing words that sound good on paper just because they think it sounds good. Really, if you feel like you want to, I don't know, like even just go a completely different route and say, well, I'm not really interested in a standard education, but I want to go to MIT because it's going to provide me with an experience to do this. Like, I think that's great if you actually mean it, you know. If so, really just understand yourself and that, and put yourself on paper, and that's, I think, the best way to do it. So for an interview, I think for a lot of international students, it's least likely to happen. For me, for undergrad and graduate programs, I did not get interviewed, and I still got into a lot of programs. But usually, if they're interviewing you, it means that they like your application and they just want to talk to you a little bit more because they might be unsure if you're the perfect fit. And these can really happen anywhere. It can happen in a local coffee shop if there's an alumni of that school living in your city. Um, it can happen over Zoom, as we can see, everything's over Zoom these days. Usually it's just an informal conversation, 30 to 60 minutes. There's really no reason at all to be nervous. Um, the the person who's interviewing you is really just assessing, is this person ready for, let's say, the rigor that's required at MIT? How do they carry themselves? Are they confident? Are they well read? I mean, and each interviewer for each school will look for something different. So again, it's not like if you say one thing or you don't say one thing, that's going to make or break you getting into university. There's really nothing to be nervous about. I think be well presented, be polite, um, and it should be fine. Noor, I don't know, did you have an interview or no?
I did not have an interview, but I think one important thing to think about when you're thinking about your interview is they're not looking for one specific person or for one person with these specific traits. So there isn't, like Noor said, there isn't right or wrong. So that's why just be yourself.
Yeah, so there you go. And Noor got into MIT undergrad and she was not interviewed. So it's not, definitely, if you don't hear from them, and your friend did, doesn't mean like you're not getting in. So that's something. And this is for all schools, not just MIT. The recommendation letters, usually schools try to ask for 2 to 3 recommendation. My advice is try to not to get it from the same type of source. And some schools might say we need 2 academic recommendation letters, but I usually like to have like my recommendation letters showcase the different sides of me. So I had one from my English teacher in high school, one from my basketball coach, and one from the principal. And that way, like it was like 3 different people that know different aspects of my personality that could speak to it. And ask someone that knows you well, because it's going to show if you ask like the best teacher in your school who doesn't know you just because they have a really good reputation, they're not going to know what to write. So that's my recommendation. Okay, so financial aid. Now we're going to jump into finances and specifically talk about how, one, expensive it is to go to school in the US, and two, some options that you can do to help mitigate the costs. So for 2019-2020 academic year, the tuition at MIT cost almost $75,000. Obviously, for the 2021 year, there were adjustments made for COVID, so they take that into consideration. But going back to everything's going to be normal starting September at MIT specifically, and I think at a lot of the major universities in the US, you should expect usually most tuition is going to go back to the way it was. And the way it's split up is you have over 70% of the tuition of the academic cost is the tuition. Then you have a larger proportion for housing. Then you look at meals, books and supplies. And so it really just depends on the school, and this changes, but it is expensive. And I do want to stress that I know that for a lot of you, especially in Lebanon with the financial situation, it's going to be difficult, trying to take money out. I know that there are some issues there, but I do want to remind you that there are currently 5 US universities that offer need-blind admission and full financial aid to all students, including international applicants. So these are Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Yale, and Amherst University. So what does need-blind admission mean? Need-blind admission means that universities will admit you regardless of your financial status. And that means they're looking just at your application, at your recommendation letters, at your grades, at your extracurriculars, but they don't look at the finances until after they have accepted you. However, when you're looking at need-blind admission, that doesn't mean that they're going to give you money. These 5 universities not only will accept you need-blind, but will also pay up to a full ride if you need it for international students. The thing is, if you're American, I think, and some of you might have the American nationality on this call, it'll be a better chance to get financial aid, but for international students, it's much more difficult. But if you get into one of these 5 universities, no matter what your financial situation, the university will cover this amount. So let's say you get in and you need the money, and they're going to be paying for your tuition, paying for your housing. You don't see any of that, but they will give you this almost $6,000 for meals for the whole year. So you need to ration out, okay, I need to be paying for my meals. This is how much I have. And Noor, I'm not sure whether they give it to you per month or whether they give it to you all lump sum at once, but that's something to note. However, that said, I mean, these are all very, very, very prestigious universities, and a lot of people that are not American are applying to them. One, because they're great, but two, because of the same reason. So when you think of it, you're also competing with people from Africa, from China, from New Zealand, from Russia, all applying to these universities, hoping to get a full ride. So you also need to keep that into perspective. Here are some options that we did some research on for financial aid that can help supplement, because sometimes, let's say if you get into Columbia, for example, in New York, they're not going to cover everything, but they will cover some things. Let's say you're still missing $10,000, $20,000 to help attend college. There are a lot of international organizations, whether it's the Jameel Education Foundation, the Open Society Foundation, Amethyst, that will help students. They have specific scholarships. The US government, the Department of State or Information Agency or Agency for International Development also has some scholarships and aid money. And there are a ton of private US organizations and scholarships, a lot of which can be searched on fastweb.com. So please make sure to note down that specific website, because you can search for scholarships which you meet the criteria for, and you can apply for them. I understand it's expensive. The US generally does not have the most affordable financial package, and that's personally why I chose to go to Canada, because I went to McGill and it cost me 3,000 Canadian dollars a year compared to 75,000. So that's something that you should definitely consider or know or acknowledge, and you can always apply. And if you get in, then see what you're going to do with your financial situation. Always, 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 always apply, but be aware that you might need finances that the school might not offer you. I'm going to hand it over to Noor, since she just went through a lot of like visa and student life things that I haven't done in a while. So Noor, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about the visa until after you get in to a certain school in the US. So first, you're going to want a student visa of the category F, not V. F because you are going to an academic institution. And then once you get in, the school will send you an I-20 form. Once you have the I-20 form, you can register online in something called the Student and Exchange Visitor Program. Once you have these two forms, you can get an interview with the embassy. I think the embassy in Lebanon is in Dubai or somewhere around there. The interview shouldn't be something to worry about. If you have an acceptance to a school, then in most cases you will get a visa. So yeah, if you have any questions about that, let me know. But I think the visa, once you have an acceptance, shouldn't be something very complicated and shouldn't be something you should worry about too much. Yeah. Now, for student life at MIT, first this is Tim the Beaver, MIT's mascot. Everyone loves Tim. Next slide, please. So for housing and dining, there are 11 residence halls or dorms, basically. This one pictured here on the right is where I'm currently located right now. And you choose your dorm based on location, dining. Just each dorm has its own dorm culture, as they call it. So there's definitely a lot of options. So there's an option for everyone to find the perfect fit. And for dining halls, also, you don't have to worry about not being able to find food that suits you. They will take into account everyone: halal, vegetarian, vegan, dairy-free, lactose-free, everything you can possibly think of, they will take into account. Next slide, please. Now, for athletics and recreation, there's a lot of varsity sports and club sports. They have every sport you can imagine, to the extent that they even have Quidditch for all of you Harry Potter fans. And then there's a Z Center, which is the gym. All the students can access that gym free of charge. It's a very, very good gym. And you can also take classes there from time to time. They will have like fitness classes, Pilates, yoga, Zumba, things like that. Now for PE, in order to graduate from MIT, you have to have taken at least 8 PE classes during your time. Each PE class is not an entire semester. It is only half a semester, or a quarter, as we call it. And many of them are actually very interesting. I'm going to be taking archery this quarter, and I'm super excited about that. So yeah, there's a bunch of very cool and very interesting classes. And there's also a swim test where this pool you can see is in the Z Center. And I think during the freshman year, most people do it. It's just to make sure you can swim. And if you can't, then they will teach you how to swim, basically.
Yeah, and I also want to add that as a student, you have access to the sailing club and the sailing dock, which means that you can take a lesson to learn how to sail. And then at any time within the business hours, you can take out a sailboat and go sailing on the Charles River, which is amazing. And once a month, they have moonlight sails, which means that when the moon is full, you can take the sailboat out and go sailing. And it's really so amazing that they give so much access to all these students and so much amenities, and they will teach you classes, and it's incredible.
Now for the arts at MIT, dance is actually a very big thing here. Whenever the weather is nice, you can just see on the grass people dancing and practicing and things like that. There's a lot of different dance team, cultural ones or otherwise. Also for music, if you play any instruments, there's a bunch of clubs you can join. And in every dorm, there is at least one music room with different instruments and places where you can practice either by yourself or with others. And then there's also visual arts for those of you who like to draw or paint or sculpt and things like that. And your work can be shown in exhibitions and galleries. Now for academics, which is kind of the bulk of what I'm going to be talking about. So MIT has 50 majors to choose from, more than 50, and more than 50 minors if you want a minor. When do you declare this? You do not have to, before applying, you do not have to choose what you want to major in. I applied not having a single clue what I wanted to major in, and that's fine. Um, so you have your advisor, and your advisor will help you figure out what's the right fit for you. But even if you don't end up choosing what you really want, you can always change your mind. They are so understanding. And even you can even not declare a major at the end of freshman year. Some people do that if they're still unsure. MIT will help you during your sophomore year. They will help you select certain classes that will lead you to know whether you really like something or not. So they will help you with the selection process. But the advisors are also very knowledgeable. For example, my advisor right now has been advising at MIT for 42 years. So he knows everything. He has seen every case possible. Now for GIRs at MIT, no matter what major you are going to be, you might be a computer science major or some engineering major or political science, for example, you will still have to take these classes. So GIRs, which are General Institute requirements, are 6 classes that you have to take basically during your time. They're 1 biology class, 1 chemistry, 2 math, and 2 physics. And these are introductory level courses. They're not some specialized, complicated classes. Um, People usually take them in their freshman year because they tend to be prerequisites for other classes, but that's also not necessary. And then there's the HAS requirement. HAS stands for Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. So even though MIT is very known for STEM and STEM related studies, it also actually really focuses on the humanities, arts, and social sciences as well. So during our time, we have to take at least 8 HAS classes. And many of them are very interesting. For example, I think next semester I might take Introduction to Acting, so there's a lot of classes that don't really feel like classes, more just like activities. But there are also classes that definitely do feel like classes. Like I took history last semester. Um, and something I want to stress on about MIT, which I've heard from my friends at other schools that it's not the same, is the collaboration. We are not only allowed to collaborate on our assignments, we are encouraged to collaborate. So I don't think during my time here, loads of assignments, I don't think I've done a single one fully by myself. Um, there is always okay, yes, MIT is rigorous and there will be a struggle, but everyone struggles together, which is amazing. Everyone helps each other. And I came here as a freshman, I barely knew anyone, and strangers would be so kind and everyone would help everyone. And I feel like this is a huge part of MIT, just this vibe, the collaboration, people helping people. Yeah, I think that's my favorite part about MIT.
So now the next steps are really how can we help you? Because the reason that we are doing this as the MIT Arab Alumni Association and the Arab Student Organization is we want to see more Arabs applying to US schools in general, but also MIT specifically. We want to see them apply and get in. And so we are happy to help answer your questions about any American colleges, guide you through the application process, look over your resumes, offer interview tips and ongoing mentorship. And so if you're interested in that, there's a form that we have so we can contact you specifically, and you can access it by using the following URL, bit.ly/MIT camp. And there are 2 A's in camp. I will be happy to email everybody as well this form. So if you're interested in getting something that's a little more focused, we are more than happy to help. And I really like this quote by Henry Nguyen, which says, "The university has become a place that prepares you for the fights in the world." And that's really true. And I think that's more true today than it ever was. The way that you're educated and the way that you think is really honed in university, and it's going to affect the way that you apply yourself outside of it. And the wonderful thing about MIT and really the US in general is that you are surrounded by people from so many different backgrounds, so many different opinions, that you are you're forced to rethink that your own opinion and think like, do I really think this because I do, or was it groupthink because I grew up in a culture that supported this? And so that's one of the wonderful things I think about education in the West. So thank you guys so much for joining. We are happy to answer any questions. If you'd like to unmute and ask a question, or maybe I think what would be easier is if you could raise your hand and then we could call on people who have any questions. And while we wait for questions, this is a photo from the team called SciTech, which is now the MIT Arab Conference. We were the founding organizers of the conference, and we turned it into a really, really successful one where we brought people from all over the Arab world, whether it's Tunis, whether it's Egypt, Lebanon, Urdun, Syria, all these places, and we created a conference and we met incredible people. So MIT really is what you make it, and we just decided as a group, let's do this as a conference. And so there are all these really cool, I think, initiatives that once you take on, you can do a lot with. Anthony Sukhan, you have a question.
Yes, hi. I wanted to ask, since like for when we apply for US universities, do we have to convert our grades into the US system with A, B, and C, or we just leave the transcript as it is, like the grades over 20 and like this?
I think that a lot of universities have experience. If it's a French system and it's over 20, they know how to convert it themselves. So you won't have to do anything unless while you're applying in the application instructions, they say convert it for us. In which case, also your school should be aware of this and they should know how to convert it. So you personally should not do anything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mark?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your time and the presentation. And I have a question. You said in the beginning that we have to apply for as many universities as we can, right?
No, I said 8 to 10. It's
Yes.
a lot of money and a lot of energy, I think, to apply to more. But you can apply to 5 حتى, but up to you.
8, 10 is the middle range, if you can say.
I actually even think that's a little the higher range. You know, if you have the time and you have the money, because each application also costs money, you can apply to as many as you want, but you don't want to burn yourself out like applying to a school just because you know you're going to get in. So you can say, I got into like 10 out of the 12 schools I applied. Apply to schools you really want to go to, and like 2 or 3 safety ones.
Yes, but in each school we have you said we have to take a presentation or a essay to write, right?
Yes.
And if you apply to 8, you have to write 16 essays, or we can copy paste.
It depends on the school. So there's a common application before. So MIT is not on it, but some other schools are, where they just ask for 1 essay. I think you can recycle some of the words that you use or some of the ideas for the different essays, especially if the questions are similar. But I would not recommend directly copy pasting the exact same sentence, because unless the question is worded exactly the same, it's going to come off not as natural. You can definitely recycle. your ideas, recycle the story, use it again, but I wouldn't recommend using the exact same format.
Sure, in each essay, we have to like change the meaning of some sentences forming structure.
It depends on the question, right? So if one essay is asking you who's the most important person in your life, and the second essay is asking you what's the most important experience, those are two different questions. So how are you going to answer them the same? But if one question is asking you, describe to me one of the most challenging experiences, and another one is describe to me when you work with a team, and the story is the same, you can use the same story. This just make sure that universities know when you're answering a question like their question, or whether you're copy pasting from another question that you put in to save time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Allegra?
Yeah, so if you apply as for undergraduate studies in MIT or any other US university, and you apply as undecided, what do you do during your first year, during your freshman year?
Noor, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, right now, I still am officially undeclared. I still don't have a major. And what you take is mostly just introductory level courses during your freshman year. So I know in Lebanon, you just go directly into your sophomore year usually, but here in the US, everyone has to take a freshman year. And during this freshman year, you take introductory level courses that are mostly prerequisites for other classes, like introductory math or introductory physics. It depends on what you plan to major in or an idea that you have. But if you don't know at all, there's usually some core classes that you have to take in the university. So I would say maybe start with those, but definitely your advisor will help you choose your classes and you won't be left alone. So there will be people helping you along your way, no matter what school you go to.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
Yes, can I ask just another question?
Yes.
Just do you recommend, like, for example, ask like that we ask the school to write like kind of a letter to explain how the school works? Because since I like, yes, we kind of follow the French program, but since we're in Lebanon, they also add some stuff to the program, and so there might be some modification. So do you think that we should ask the school to kind of write a letter to explain kind of how the whole program works and all that stuff, or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think that couldn't hurt. I don't know if your school has experience with students applying before to US universities or not. I think your guidance counselor, if you guys have one, could help explain, because I'm sure there are other students who've been there before you who have had the same issue. So maybe it would be helpful talking to people who graduated from your school and went to school in the US, what they did. But I don't think it could hurt.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do we need to do the TOEFL if we are already doing the SAT?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
For those of you, if you have American nationalities, you don't need to do the TOEFL. The TOEFL is only for international students or people who are not American.
Okay.
Great. If nobody has any other questions, oh, Anthony, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's the third question.
Yeah,
Was just
relax.
so for the link you gave us, so we can kind of talk to you on this link, like for example, while you are going through the application process, we can kind of send you questions, maybe, I don't know, could you for example take a look at the essays or something like this, or
Yes.
how, like, what can we do on this link?
So if you actually go on the link, it'll take you to a Google form that you fill out, your name, your email, what year you're graduating, and why you want a mentor. So in the why, tell us, like, why do you want someone to mentor you, whether it's whether it's because you want someone to help you with your essay or to look at something else. And we will get back to you by end of April once all our CAAMP sessions are done. And hopefully, if we have enough, assign you to a mentor. So it's just a form to fill out, and then we can come back and help.
Okay. So, but can we like ask you questions, like for example in June, because I think right now it's kind of soon.
Yes.
Okay.
No, exactly. So the end of April, we'll reach out and tell you like, hi, we've matched you with a mentor, and the mentor will be with you until December. Sorry, I need to clarify that. So the mentor will help you. We have dedicated like 2 hours a month for our mentors to help students until the end of December when you submit your application.
Okay, thank you. So we can kind of ask him. So basically we just ask for a mentor, and this mentor will kind of help us through the application process.
Yes,
Until December.
Yes, if we have enough mentors. We still don't know how many people are going to apply on the form, and obviously we have a limited amount, but we'll get back to everybody by end of April and let you know next steps. So if you're interested, just fill out the form.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Allegra?
So if I'm graduating in 2 years, should I fill out the form by the end of next year? So not this year, next year?
No, so this form will only be open until end of April. If you want help now on like things like what should I be doing now to get into school in 2 years, that's what we can help with. But our mentors will only help until December, and then next year we're going to have another CAAMP session, something similar, and then we'll have another form. So that's how it works.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Ivana?
Yeah, thank you. I know there's like clubs and like stuff like at MIT precisely, like clubs, for example, related to rocket science and stuff like that. Could you talk a bit more about them, because there's something that interests me a lot.
Noor, do you want to talk about the clubs?
Yeah, so there is a rocket club at MIT. I think it's called the Rocket Team. And so what happens is at the beginning of every semester, there's a day dedicated to all the clubs, where usually I've only experienced the virtual format so far, but it's usually like you can walk around and you will see all the clubs and you can sign up for what you're interested in. And then they will send you emails and talk to you more about what the club is about. And then you end up choosing which clubs you want to join. And there are clubs for everything. Also, anything you can think of, it's there. There's also a Lebanese club, an Arab club, which we are part of. Yeah, do you have any other specific questions about the clubs?
No, thank you. And I actually had another question as well. I know there's IAP, I think it's like a month break or so after the midterms.
Yeah, IAP is the month of January, and it comes in between the fall semester and the spring semester. IAP can be used either to do nothing, take a break, which people do, but it can also be used to do research or take an internship, a small one, or take some classes. Some classes are available during IAP. So IAP, it stands for Independent Activities Period. And I think it's called that because you can do whatever you want to do. However you want to spend this month, you can spend it. Like you decide.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Marie-Claire?
Yes. Is it okay if we don't complete the AP classes or SAT subject tests if they're not available in our region?
Yes, the SAT tests are not a thing anymore. You don't have to worry about those at all. And the APs are not something necessary. They're just additional if you want them. So also if they're not available to you, you don't have to worry about that either.
Okay, thanks.
Matteo?
Yes, do lots of students at MIT are part of sororities or fraternities?
I think we have a quite active sorority fraternity scene. Not all the students are part of them, but many are.
Okay, and another questions, do most students at MIT live on campus? Or some live outside campus? I'm not talking now with COVID, but before COVID, since you were a student before.
Yes, most students, especially as freshmen and sophomores, tend to live on campus, and you can live on campus up until your senior year, but some people choose to leave. So there's a mix, but
Okay,
usually
thank
as a
you.
freshman and sophomore, yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Perfect. Okay, well, good luck everyone with your application process, whether it's this year, whether it's next year. We're always happy to help. And remember to fill out the form. And thank you so much for joining and taking the time. And we hope to see some of you at MIT in a couple of years. Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.